Freeology Friday. I am Aaron Tomlinson, and he is
Derrick Day. Thank you, Aaron. It's good to be here.
Thanks, Derrick. Great to be here with you on this Good Friday, huh?
It is Good Friday.
So what do you have in the glass?
Well, in the spirit of the season, I've got some Cabernet Sauvignon from Sutter Home, which is not the best brand, but it's like on the low end of the drinkability scale. So it's not awful, but it's in the spirit of the season. This is Good Friday, that time of the year when we celebrate where Jesus's blood was shed for the remissions of sins for all humanity.
That's right. So I've got a red blend.
Hey, great minds.
Again, yeah. So yes, Sangre de Cristo.
Yep. Today's broadcast brought to you by Menage a Trois Wines. Say that in the radio voice,
We should create our own little commercial and send it to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Send us a case or something.
Yeah, maybe they'll send us some free wine if nothing else.
Yeah.
It'd be better if they sent us money, but free wine, who's complaining?
Yeah. True. Let me see something.
We are getting Gnostic here. We're swerving into the lane of Gnosticism, and I'm excited about this because if I could have a subtitle for what it is that we're going to be doing here, I would call it A Better Way to Christian.
Yeah, I like that. And that is true, isn't it?
It absolutely is true. Absolutely. Because Christianity, in the form that it takes now, I'll just be candid here, it sucks ass. I mean, there's no nicer way to put it. And the thing is that what I think about is, for what we have as far as like canonized scripture, or what we have as far as orthodoxy is concerned, what people don't understand is that Christianity was almost as divided in the first century as it is today. As far as sex segments, different cults, if you will. And so what Constantine brought to the table in the Council of Nicaea was this homogeny, this orthodoxy, right? It wasn't canonization. That, we've talked about that before, but it's this orthodoxy and the Nicene Creed and all of that. And it was like turning Christianity into this nice homogeneous orthodoxy. But with that being said, is that when we talk about Gnosticism and gnosis, we're talking about hidden knowledge. What was it that really, what is it that you can learn to help save yourself? One, and then two, why is all of this on the cutting room floor? Why didn't it make it into scripture? And these are questions that we're going to be answering in the weeks to come. But that being said, you have a topic, Aaron, so I'm going to kick it over to you to tee this up.
Yeah, so I was I saw a post that you made, 9 hours ago, it says here, on your Facebook page. It says you were never, quote unquote, lost. You merely needed to discover yourself.
Yeah.
And that really speaks to me where I'm at, where I've been at. So I thought it'd be a good topic for us to cover. And I'm going to use a scripture here.
Ooh, okay.
And getting back to my preaching days.
Is this going to be Gnostic scripture or Orthodox scripture?
It is from the Gospel of Thomas.
Okay. All right. So we're going full Gnostic here.
Yeah. Gospel of Thomas, verse 97. And for those that don't know, there's just as much evidence that the Gospel of Thomas was written by Thomas and an earlier gospel as any of the four gospels that we have. So
yeah,
it's kind of interesting, isn't it, to think that
actually, Aaron, there's more evidence that Thomas actually wrote his gospel than it is that Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John wrote any of theirs. But carry on.
Yeah. So Gospel of Thomas, no stories, miracles. I don't think there's a passion, a death, burial, resurrection in it. It's just the sayings or the teachings of Jesus. And so in verse 97, little parable here, Jesus said, the Father's kingdom is like a woman who was carrying a jar full of meal. While she was walking along a distant road, the handle of the jar broke and the meal spilled behind her along the road. She didn't know it. She hadn't noticed a problem. When she reached her house, she put the jar down and discovered that it was empty. So, applying this to self-discovery, right? Or self-loss in a different sort of way. I loved how you did that, because in the church we like to talk about the lost people, right? We're going to minister to the
Amazing grace.
Yeah.
I once was lost, but now
was lost, but now I'm found. Jesus, left the 99 to search for the one. Yeah. I thought it was interesting. I was thinking this week, I don't know if anybody called me like since my deconstruction. Like, I don't think I was that sheep that went astray. I don't think anybody left the 99.
Yeah.
But
well, I can say that there were people that came after my one lost ass, right? But they were trying to drag me back in by force, kicking and screaming. There was no love.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. So the idea that I'm working with this parable is that we get involved in life. We get involved in our journey, right? Our journey home, whatever we want to call it. And we lose parts of ourselves, or parts of ourselves can leak out, not in the Christian sense of I'm lost, but in the sense that we just can. I know for me, I don't want to say it this way, but I don't know how else to say it. I lost my way to some degree, just from the pressures and the stress of life, and just thinking about over the past few years. I went through some chronic neck pain, neck surgery, some stuff with my kids and their schooling and health issues that they had. And then some health issues that I've had since September, and of course work and just raising a family and just doing life. And after a while, it's kind of like, what happened to the last 10 years? What happened to the last 5 years? Where did they go? And how much of the last 10 years, how much of the last 5 years did I spend just going through the daily motions, just doing the daily thing? Not really. I mean, not that I had completely neglected self-care, but not really giving a priority to self-care. And so in that sense, then I would say that I lost parts of myself. My meal trickled out along the road or along the journey, right? And so last September, I end up in a hospital bed. Craziest thing ever. I was having trouble breathing, shortness of breath. I thought it was allergy season a little bit. Spring and fall around here can be times for allergies. Thought maybe I was developing some adult asthma. Went to the doctor a couple times. They listened to my heart, checked me out, said, we think you're anxious. Here's a referral to a counselor. The counselor graduated from the school where we teach the interns, so that I was like, I think I'll pass. And then went back a few weeks later, and they're like, well, just come back and see us. It's amazing when I think about how much they blew me off. Come back in a few weeks if you're not feeling better. The very next day, after having been to the doctor, was my birthday. The following day, I wake up. I can't breathe. My heart's racing. Can't make it up the stairs without just huffing and puffing. Little oximeter that we have read my oxygen at, I want to say 81, my heart rate at like 149. So my wife was like, you're going to the emergency room. First time in my adult life, first time since I was 9 years old that I'd been to an emergency room. And I thought I'd get some steroids or something, right? They'd give me a shot of steroids or something, open up my lungs, and I'd be good to go. And within 15 minutes, you're in trouble in the emergency room when you got more than one person taking your vitals. just a hint to everybody out there. When you got 3 or 4 people in the room, one's taking your blood pressure, one's looking at your oxygen, the other one's starting an IV, and the doctor's looking at you while they're putting, electrodes or whatever on your chest.
Yeah.
It's not a good place to be.
Yeah, that's like if you see somebody on the side of the road pulled over by the police. If there's one cop car, they're probably getting a warning or a ticket. If there are two or more cop cars, that guy's going to jail.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's a really great comparison. And then the next thing I know, the doctor's asking me if I'm going to want CPR if my heart gives out. Like literally the very next thing. Like if, we're going to treat you here, but if something happens, what are your wishes? Do you want CPR? Do you want life support? And so I'm like, okay, the shit just got real, right? So they have to transfer me because the hospital I went to, the emergency room that I went to, the only thing that they have beds for is people who have had orthopedic surgery. So they had to load me up in an ambulance. That was an interesting ride because they strap you down. They strap you down like a mental patient. No disrespect to mental patients, but they strap you down, take you in the ambulance, and I ended up spending 4 days in the hospital, and that got my attention. I realized, I was on with Tommy and Matt this few days ago, and Tommy was talking about, his journey with cancer and all of that. And he says, I don't want to be cliche, but I hate this because it sounds so cliche, but I came close to death and it gave me a different perspective. And I can certainly relate to that. It was a good wake up call for me. Right. And when something like that happens, you tend to reevaluate things and say, am I really, I don't want to just keep doing the same old thing over and over again, living my own version of Bill Murray's movie Groundhog Day, where I'm just spending myself for everybody else that's in my life. And so reevaluating how I'm spending my time, reevaluating what's really important to me, what do I want to be about, what do I want to do as I'm going forward. And I realized that I had lost myself. I was just going through the motions again. I was living, in a lot of ways, I was living from the neck up, meaning I was just in my head all the time, in my thoughts, in my story, in my, intellect, in my analytical mind, just all the time. So one of the things that I began to do was to be more embodied in my life and getting to know my emotions again, and all of that kind of stuff. And so through that process, then there's been this sort of self-discovery that I've experienced that has been very rewarding for me. And one of the things that I have said, I've known this, I've lived this, I've practiced this, but it is being renewed in my life. I am being revived. I'm going through a revival. I'm going through a renewal. And what that is that in our most natural state, that is the best way to approach life. So whereas Christianity would say, you're messed up and you need to get saved, you're lost and you need to get found, I would say, or the self-help industry would say that you need to change. I would say that once you discover who you really are and you become comfortable in that you don't have to change, you basically just allow yourself to be who you are, and life gets easier. Life begins to cooperate with you better. I think sometimes life does not cooperate with us because we're not living authentically and true to ourselves. And obviously, I've been talking about authenticity, being true to yourself as long as you've known me, I think, Derrick. But it's real easy to be carrying your pitcher and get involved in life and just be leaking the meal out.
That is such a powerful analogy. So that's where I'm at with this tonight. And so for those of you that don't know, I had a very similar experience to yours 7 years ago. I was, having trouble breathing. I'm coughing up blood. I go to the hospital and they say, "Oh, dude, you've got heart failure." I'm like, right. And so my ejection fraction, which is the amount of blood, the percentage of blood that's ejected from your heart with every beat, mine was down to 20. And they said, okay, you go below this, you're at risk of imminent death. Now, full disclosure, you were below that.
I was considerably, I mean, I was below 20. And
so it's like, you're at that state, and this will make you rethink everything, because you're facing down your own mortality. And so, we talked about Tommy, and Tommy and his battle with cancer. And for those of you that don't know, Tommy Stewart, one of our colleagues, in this network of shows that we produce, Tommy had stage 4 skin cancer. It was like the prognosis for him was not good. And by not good, I'm like, basically say, get your shit together, guy, but he pulled it out. And so what I think of the common denominator of each of us is that we realized that we were leaking meal. We didn't make it all the way to the destination and find out that the vessel was empty.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where I want to hopefully add something to what your original premise is that you can only detect the leakage in the vessel by understanding yourself. Mm-hmm. In other words, if you don't understand the vessel that is containing this precious artifact or substance, if you don't understand the nature of the vessel, you can't really detect the leak. And so I something hit me last week that, we always talk about love. You were part of this love movement. I was part of this love movement. Henry Harris was part of this love movement. So many, Kyle Butler, so many of us that we were talking about love, and the highest vibration for a human to attain,
right,
is love. And I said, nope. This is what hit me last week. Love is not the highest vibration. The highest vibration is self-awareness. Mm. And what brought me to this is that there's an Earth, Wind, and Fire song called "Can't Hide Love," and I'm not going to sing it because I don't want to hurt anybody's ears. But one of the hooks in the song is like, "You can't give what you never had." Mm. And so when I began to put all of this together, I was like, how can I say that I love someone when I really haven't assessed myself? Mm-hmm. I don't know me. Mm-hmm. And so going back to like your journey with your health scare, and I'm going back to mine, I said that was, if I could draw a stake or put a stake in the sand, that was it. That was the moment when I said, okay, I really don't know me. Mm-hmm. I need to get to know me. But even still, I was still on this love thing. I'm like, I'm going to manifest love. I'm going to express love because it's the highest vibration. And I want to raise my vibration. And it took me until last week to realize that no, love is not the highest vibration. Self-awareness is. So again, to talk about the woman with this carrying the meal, the handle breaks, right? And she gets to her destination. She finds out her vessel was empty. So she's walked all this time with no awareness that she's leaking, that she's losing something.
Right.
And so if I can unpack this a little bit, is that what you're saying here is that if we don't understand ourselves, we begin to lose ourselves along the way. And then you get to a point and you say, wait a second, I'm empty. How did this happen? Well, I never really stopped to assess the vessel and ensure its integrity. Right. So I'm thinking to myself, so like, people say, oh, well, you're lost. You're lost. You in the Christian idiom, right? That you're lost. You're in need of a savior. No, you're not lost, right? This is funny because people always talk about Columbus discovered America, or let's even go further back and they say Leif Erikson discovered America, right? Mm-hmm. Let's go back even further and say that maybe West Africans discovered America. They didn't discover shit. It was already there.
Yeah.
What they got was an awareness of where they were and their position relative to this thing.
I love that.
So the thing is that, you know, when Christianity teaches that you're lost, that is man, that is a horrible non sequitur, right? Because you were never lost. You're here. And you know, the old saying is, no matter where you go, there you are. The thing is, you have to assess your position. And so, you know, people say, I'm going to say this and I'm going to shut up, is that if you don't know where you are and don't know where you're going, any direction will take you there, right? So the problem with most of us is that not that we don't know where we're going. Yeah, that's certainly a problem, but we don't know where we are. We haven't assessed our position relative to the people in our lives, the places in our lives, the situations, the circumstances. We haven't assessed any of that. So we have not taken stock of the vessel when we're pouring shit in, or maybe not even pouring shit in, but we say, okay, I have this. This is something of value that I know I have. And now I'm going to take this into the marketplace of ideas. I'm going to take this into the marketplace of spirituality. I'm going to take this into some marketplace where the idea, where the content of this vessel can be shared. But I've never assessed the vessel. I've never checked it for leaks. And so imagine this, if you're a shipbuilder, right? And so we go back into the glorious days of exploration, you know, the days of Henry Cabot and, you know, Christopher Columbus and Vasco da Gama and all of these others, right? Imagine if they set sail in these vessels without ever checking them for leaks. Those trips wouldn't have lasted very long.
Yep.
At some point, the superior medium of the sea would have overtaken the ship and sank them. So watch this. There are two things that happen here. One is that we don't check the vessel and we're leaking. So whatever it is that we have a value that's within us, as we go along, we're leaking it. We're dropping it along the way. And that's the whole casting your pearls before swine analogy, right? The second one is that you don't assess it for water tightness or smoke tightness. And so you go out sailing and suddenly you're sinking. And you say, well, somebody asks you, hey, did you check the boat for leaks? Leaks? What are those? Right? So anyway, back to you, Aaron.
No, I love it. So let's go into a little bit about how we leak. What causes leaks? What causes us to lose parts of ourselves as we're going along the journey? It's really interesting to me how I was reading something that Barbara Simons wrote a few weeks back, and she was talking about the ego, and she was using this analogy of marriage to talk about blending the masculine parts of ourselves with the feminine parts of ourselves. And I think she was referring to the masculine as like the higher self or the divine self, and the feminine being the part of us that lives in this world, and bringing those together. I think that's what she was meaning there. But what stood out to me was she said, I'm starting to question whether or not we even have an ego. And that struck me. So I thought, okay. And then she mentions the work of Freud. And so I just asked AI, right? I asked Google AI, not ChatGPT. Where did we get the idea of the ego? Where did the term ego become part of our language? Where did this originate? Where did this come from? And sure enough, instantly it said through the work of Sigmund Freud. So I dug in a little bit deeper into that, and that would be accurate to a degree. The problem is that Sigmund Freud wrote in German.
Yeah.
And so he had to be translated. So his early translator, I forget the guy's name, when Freud was talking about aspects of the mind or aspects of the psyche, he decided to interpret those aspects, or translate those aspects into Latin rather than into English. So when Freud is writing in German and he's using the word ego, he's actually using the word ich in German, which is the word for I. If you begin a sentence in German with I, it's going to be ich. So this whole thing of the id, the superego, and the ego is all just a Latin translation.
Okay.
Freud actually made it simpler than that. He was, instead of using the word ego, because the word for I in Latin is ego, if we just translated it I, it's quite possible that nobody be talking about their ego today.
Okay.
Which I find really fascinating. All right, so what does this have to do with losing the I, or losing aspects or parts of yourself? So Freud basically had what's called a psychodynamic theory. In other words, for him, the ego, what he called the ego, the id, the superego, all that stuff, these were not things. This was just descriptions of a process that would take place inside of us. And so his theories were that we would have urges and drives and things that would come up from us, primarily sexual in his way of working this out. And then we lived in a society. So we had a society that would tell us what is okay and what is not okay, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And that was the over I, or what got translated as the superego. But if we translate it into English, it'd be the over I. So you have the it, the word id simply means the it. And for Freud, that was animal instincts. And then you had this over I that kept your animal instincts in check, right? Mm-hmm. And from that would emerge this I that would have to negotiate each decision. Do I act on the it, what I want to do, what's my animal impulses and animal instincts, or do I follow what society has told me that I'm supposed to follow and what society says that I'm supposed to do? All right. Now let's just presuppose that we are more, the it that we are is more than just our animal instincts, and it's more than just libido. I'm a firm believer, just watching my two kids, right? Like, early psychological theories were a child comes into the world a blank slate. Yeah. They are the way they are because they've been conditioned to be that way. They've been trained to be that way. They've been nurtured into that. But anybody that's had kids knows that's bullshit.
Right.
Anybody that's raised children know that they come with their own sort of temperament, their own sort of innate personality. And so here's my hypothesis, and I'd love to get your thoughts about this. There are aspects of us that are innate to us that we are here to express in our own unique fashion. But we have to do it within the context of a society. We have to do it in the context of others, right?
Yep.
And so we learn from others, from our parents primarily, right from wrong, appropriate from inappropriate, ethical from unethical, all the way down to our table manners or not table manners.
Yep.
Right. And so there is often this tension between what we want to do and what we think or perceive other people want us to do, or what they actually want us to do.
Yeah.
And often those things are not totally reconcilable. And so we will sometimes give more thought to the social consequences of something. We will give more thought to, what is this going to mean? What are other people going to think of me?
How will I be perceived?
People pleasing. How will I be perceived?
Yeah.
And so we compromise. We make a choice. The I makes a choice to go with how other people are going to perceive us rather than even sometimes how we're perceiving ourselves.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I don't want this isn't a zero-sum game. It's not like it's always better to just do what you want to do. But I think too many times we sacrifice what we want, we sacrifice what we desire, we sacrifice our natural inclinations and intuitions and whatever because of our fear of how we're going to be judged by other people. And when we do that, we can begin to lose some of those aspects of ourselves along the way.
This is really good because we've talked about this before, about ego, and why I think that the whole discussion, the general discussion around ego is really not well grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is that ego in and of itself is not bad. I think ego protects us from some of these things, like losing ourselves. Because watch this. This was my thing. I kind of reached a point where I said, okay, I am defining myself by others.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, I want to please my wife. I want to please my kids. I want to please my parents. I want to please people that I work with and all of that. And so in doing that, I was not only leaking in my vessel, I was self-sabotaging.
Mm.
In other words, the leak in the vessel was not an imperfection of the vessel.
Right.
It was a function of me puncturing the vessel.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
So I'm thinking, I said, like, if I introduce a reasonable level of ego, now that gives me some guardrails, because now I say, okay, this is me, and me is important, and me as an identity, me as an entity, me as a being, as an energy force is important, right? And
Yep.
and that's all. If you let your ego just simply dictate that, right, that you are someone, you are valuable, you are a contributor, you are something, right?
Yep.
And I think that what happens is that society, religion, philosophy, politics, you know, there are a lot of different things that teach us to subordinate the ego.
Yep.
So what happens is that in the process of subordinating our ego, we lose our value. We give up our value added position. We abrogate that. And so when we do that, we puncture our own vessel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we begin to leak. And so what I had to say is that I had to come to this conclusion that no matter what, I'm good enough. No matter what, I add value. No matter what, I am something to. I am an entity that is worthy of love, that is worthy of respect, and so on and so forth. So now what I've learned is, and this was the big thing, because like I said, man, I was thinking, you know, you're told that you're lost. You're told that you're lost from a religious standpoint. You're lost and you need to be rescued, right? You're taught that you're lost. Like, you know, they talk about like young men today. You know, young men are lost because they've lost their way. Everybody's lost. The whole concept of lost is it. And let me just say this, right? And y'all, please hear my heart on this, is that the whole concept of lost is an issue of control.
Yep.
Because if you can be persuaded as to whether or not you're lost, or whether or not you understand your own locus, if you understand your own locus, you're not lost. You may be a little confused, you may be a little turned around, you may be a little disoriented, but you're definitely not lost, right? But if you say that I'm lost, okay, how am I found? So now you're opening the door, you're extending an invitation to religion, to philosophy, to society, to redefine you, or to even individuals. So the thing is that we have to get past this whole idea of being lost. Listen, if you're listening, if you're in the sound of our voice here, you are not lost. You may not know exactly where you are, or let me say this: you know where you are because no matter where you go, there you are. You know where you are. You are here, wherever here is. Now, what you may not know is where are you relative to something else.
Right.
Right. So now what you need to do is you need to determine your relative bearing. I know who I am. I know what I am. I know what I contribute. I know what my value is. Now let me say, I understand this. So now what is the path forward? So that's the thing. Is like we've got to get past this whole, because again, we don't have a full rendering of this woman. All we know is that she's carrying meal,
Right.
the handle broke, and she begins to leak. So let's look at that for a second. Let's focus in. Let's double click on that. Where do our handles break, Aaron? Where do the handles break? Because watch this. Like, and again, your handles can break in your relationship with your significant other, with your children, with your parents. Your handle can break in a lot of places. And then what happens is, what is in you? Oh my God. And I was watching this movie. Dr. Joe Dispenza was big in this, but it's called Emotion 2.0.
Mm.
And in this, one of the psychoanalysts that was in the he recounted an anecdote that this man was dying, and he asked his wife to come close to him, and he says, "Listen, I need you to hear me carefully, because I'm not going to be able to say this again. But this is what I want you to know, that every time you wake up and you remove your head from the pillow, you have everything you need to do everything you need to do."
I love that.
And so what happens is, we're told that we're lacking something.
Yep.
We have to fix something, that we're broken inherently. See, so watch this. This is what I learned. This is the money shot, like a porno. This is the money shot. I'm not broken.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not broken. What I am is I am integrated. I am whole. I am self-contained. I have everything that I need according to the universe's riches. I have everything that I need. I'm lacking nothing. But if I let someone dictate to me that I'm lacking something, and I allow this to rule my thoughts, now I don't need to wait for someone else to break my handle or to puncture my vessel. I've done it. I've done the work. So let's talk about the broken handle. How does the handle get broken? And if we identify, and this is the other thing too, we need to identify that the handle was broken. And if we identify that the handle was broken, how do we fix it before we take another step and lose more of what's valuable inside of us?
Yeah. So something comes to my mind, something my son showed me that really impacted me. It was sort of a meme, and it had this kid was, I think, going into second grade, and big smile, twinkle in his eyes, first day of school. I'm going to go learn stuff. I'm going to go make friends. I'm going to go play and have fun, right? And then the next part of the meme is the same kid in seventh grade. And the light is out. He's just depressed. It's hard to describe in words, the contrast, but the message was very clear. Like, when we're kids, I want to say that we don't know that we're broken, but that would imply that we are broken. We are not broken. We don't think we're fine in and of ourselves. We're excited to go out and contribute in the world. We're excited to get to know people and for other people to get to know us. We're excited to learn things. We're excited for new experiences. And then invariably, it doesn't work that way. We get picked on, we get made fun of, we get laughed at, we get bullied, whatever the case may be. Whoever it is that tells us you're broken, whoever it is that tells you you're not okay. And we internalize those messages until they become a part of us to the degree that they become self-fulfilling prophecies. In other words, we begin to live as though those experiences are the truth about us, instead of living innately from who we are. And I was talking about this today. I did a thing in the New Day Global group today, for Good Friday, and I was just thinking about, we live in this culture of shame. We live in this culture where you can't make a mistake, where you can't grow, like where people are defined by their worst moments if they're caught on camera. You know,
Mm,
I use the example of, let's say that you lose, let's say you lose your shit with the manager at a store or something,
yeah.
and you're a white woman. Well, now all of a sudden
You're Karen.
You're the Karen of the week, right?
Right.
And you're blowing up all over. If somebody gets it on video, maybe you're blowing up uh, on X or whatever.
Yeah.
And or I brought up Monica Lewinsky. You know, that poor lady will never ever outlive her stigma. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, can you imagine, especially right after the, you know, the Star Report and all that stuff from back in the 90s, people
Yep.
probably watching that are too young to remember this have to look up in a history book. How's that make you feel, Derrick?
Yeah.
But but uh you know, think about her putting in a resume after that happened. Think
Yeah.
about her trying to make friends. Think about her introducing herself. Think about you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because we tend to relish in telling people how they're wrong and relish in people's low points.
Right. We
People.
love to create shame for others.
Absolutely. And so we internalize those messages, right? I think that's where the handle breaks, is that things happen and we internalize those messages, whether it be from family or whether it be from our own comparisons of other people. I'm not as smart or as handsome or pretty or
Mhm.
wealthy or whatever, right?
Yep.
And so then we begin to believe that we're broken. We begin to believe that we're lacking. We begin to believe that we're uh, not good enough.
Right.
And that's the point that I would say for me, as I'm thinking
Yeah.
about this and just talking this through. That's one of the points, at least, where the handle gets broken.
Yep.
And I think that it's so important. Like, affirmation can be so powerful and so important. And I think it's so important to, like, there was a book that was written in the 70s called I'm Okay, You're Okay.
Yep.
Like,
Oh,
we almost need that. We almost need uh, a culture of people in our lives that affirm I'm okay, you're okay.
And you know what? Let me tell you a story. I have an anecdote. This is not really an anecdote. This is actually a true story that my youngest son, Anthony, when we moved to Arizona, and I think Anthony was in the second grade when we got there, and we were going through this thing where basically Anthony felt like he wasn't being seen. And I'll never forget him saying, his little, 6-year-old, 7-year-old self telling me, the teacher doesn't see me.
Mm,
And so immediately, I'm going into Papa Bear mode,
sure.
right? And I'm going into the school and I'm like, look, if you're going to invest attention in other children, you will invest attention in mine. And I thought I was doing something. I really thought that I was doing something to help my child.
Yeah.
But when I look back on it, now here's where your blind spots get revealed, Aaron,
Yeah.
because I realized something. I said, before Clyde Tombaugh discovered Pluto, did Pluto exist? In other words, just because it wasn't seen
Correct.
did not dismiss its existence.
So good.
And that's something that what we may go through things where we know, I know that I'm contributing, I'm adding value to the situation. I'm a value added friend. I'm a value added spouse. I'm a value added son or daughter. I'm a value added church member. I'm a value added member of the community, but I'm not seen. I don't think anyone sees me. And so as a result, we
Mm.
assign observation to value.
Yeah.
Now, notwithstanding that we have value, whether we have observation or not. You
Gosh,
know,
this is
it's
so
like
good.
we look at
Dude, I just gotta tell you, man, I'm sorry for interrupting, but this is so good. I just love every bit of what you're saying.
Oh, dude, I'm on a tear because this is when you told me what the topic was, I was thinking, I said there are so many directions that we can go in and with this, and so I actually did my homework. I actually looked up that passage of scripture in the Gospel of Thomas, and I contemplated what was it actually saying. What is this saying to the hearer? And so when we look at things in the quantum, right? In quantum physics, that observation changes outcome. The observer effect, right? It causes the velocity or the position of the thing to change, right? So what we're doing is we're craving the observation to determine what our position or our movement is. But the reality is that quantum phenomenon exist and move whether we observe them or not. All it is, the observer effect causes the wave function to collapse, and we say, okay, now we have a probability that we can assign to this. But whether anybody is looking at me, whether anybody's paying attention to me, whether anybody recognizes my value or not, it doesn't fucking matter because I have value.
Yeah.
And the thing is that and this is why I think the whole Gnostic paradigm is so powerful, because it shifts. There's a value shift between that which is external versus that which is internal.
Yeah.
So what we're doing now, and in this conversation, we're shifting the value point from something we're looking out, we're looking up, we're looking around, we're looking at something external to validate us.
Yep.
And the thing is, we don't need that. Our validation. This is the thing: when you begin to self-evaluate, self-realize, self-actualize. Now you're saying that irrespective of what anybody thinks of me, irrespective of what anybody assigns my value to be, I am, and I have and create value. And so when I look at this, I say, okay, how do we fix the broken handles? How do we fix the broken handles? I want to tell everyone who's listening that if you don't think you add value, if you don't think that you're valuable in and of yourself, if you don't think that you're bringing something to the table, if you don't think that you contain something of value, if you don't have any realization of that, then your handle is broken and you are going to leak. But the minute that you realize, motherfucker, I am valuable in and of myself. I bring something to the table. I am a contributor. I'm not just a contributor, I'm a value add. And when you realize that, and here's the other thing too, is that you say when you come into these situations, you say, I'm coming in with the realization that I am not going to let anybody denigrate my value. I'm not going to let anybody devalue me. I know what I bring to the table. Now, if you come into that, guess what? Your handle becomes unbreakable.
That's some good preaching there. Speaking of preaching, a couple people commented on my hair because I let my hair down because it's Good Friday, so I'm being like Jesus.
Let me go on ahead and
being
let
like
my
Jesus.
hair down too.
I'm drinking my communion wine.
Yeah, and we have bread too, Aaron. We can actually do communion.
I'd have to go get some. Nah, man, that's so good. That's like some good preaching right there. Like really good stuff. Absolutely love the illustration about Pluto,
Yeah.
because here's the flip side of it. We can sort of develop this shame-based identity when people don't see us, when people don't pay attention to us, when we're giving our value to people and I'm not giving our value, we are taking our value from other people's estimations of us.
Yep.
So someone laughs at us, someone makes fun of us, someone looks down on us, someone, whatever, right? A million different things. But the flip side of this coin is I can also, let me see how I want to say this. If somebody's praising me, if somebody's telling me how great I am, if I'm being seen more than anybody else in the classroom, let's say, or anybody more than anybody else in whatever environment I'm in, I'm still operating not from a place of my own self-estimation or my own self-value. I'm operating from the value that other people are given to me. It's the same thing, except that I'm saying I'm worth something because people see me. I'm worth something because people are praising me. I'm worth something because I get lots of likes and attention on social media, or, you know, whatever the case may be. And that's still breaking your handle.
Right. Because now you're assigning your value to what someone else thinks of you, right?
Yeah.
And because they're propping you up, because they're boosting you up, they're gassing you up, and you think, you know, see, and that's where there's a thing that we call in the hood, like where you smell your own shit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when you believe what other people are telling you, and it's all good. You know, you're smelling your own shit.
Yeah, absolutely. People can control you with shame, fear, or they can control you with flattery and compliments.
Praise. Yep. Come on, man.
And if your whole sense of self comes from who I am in the eyes of someone else, then I'm going to have to continue to impress that person, or at least impress somebody, in order to feel like I'm okay, in order to feel like I belong, in order to feel like I have value, instead of just understanding you have inherent value because you are you, because you are here. Right. And man, really, really, really good stuff.
I mean, this is profound. And again, you know, I look at other. So we talked about how being devalued can break the handle. We've also talked about how being overvalued can break the handle. Because think about this, right? If you have a vessel, it's a 1-quart vessel, and you try to pour a gallon worth of shit into it. Now that vessel is overwhelmed, right? Yeah. And so it's going to spill out from over the top, right? And you're still spilling out your contents, even though like you're filled up and you think, man, I'm blessed. Well, no, not exactly. You're being overwhelmed with praise. So let's talk about this for a second. Like, on the one hand, you know, your vessel can be leaking because you've punctured it, you know, or someone else has punctured it, because that happens too. Let me tell you something. There are some people out here. I see Renee and Tommy out here, and these are people who I know that people try to puncture holes in their shit all the time.
Sure.
These are people. You are another one. People try to poke holes in your argument, poke holes in your position. So there are people that are trying to, you know, take away from you by damaging your vessel. But similarly, you have people that just really, really they adore you. You know, I know, like Renee is one like that. You're one like that. I'm like that. You know, Kyle Butler is like that. And so people just pour into they pour into your vessel. They pour into your vessel. And so let me say this, because this is going to help somebody. That when someone is pouring into your vessel to the point of overflow, a way to keep your handle from breaking is to bring your vessel close to the vessel of others so that what your spillover is goes into their bucket. Because there are people out there who are lacking, they're struggling. I don't have anybody pouring into me. But if I can be close enough to Aaron, if I can be close enough to Kyle, if I can be close enough to Renee, if I can be close enough to Barbara, I can get something that they have to fill my vessel. Right? And watch this. Let's say that you're getting, or that someone is coming close to you who their handle is broken. They're leaking, but you're able to pour into their vessel. So their vessel remains at a certain level in spite of the leak until we can address the leak. And see, this is where the concept of community comes in. Because now if I say, okay, I'm not, and let me just say this. I can't speak for anybody else, but I can speak for you and I can speak for me. Because I've known you long enough, I've spent enough time talking to you. I know, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that Aaron Tomlinson loves to help people. I know this beyond the shadow of a doubt. And so I know that you pour into the vessels of others on a regular basis. So that being said, is that, you and let me just say this. I'm going to say this too. I'm going to gas you up for a minute, because sometimes you'll do that to your own detriment. You'll pour out to your depleted.
Absolutely.
To make sure that the vessels alongside of you remain full.
Yeah.
So that's another area where the handle can be broken.
Yep.
Right? Because you're like, okay, I've got plenty. Let me give, and then you're giving. You're filling up the other vessels. You're filling up other buckets. But suddenly you're like, wait a second. I'm not leaking, but I don't have anything.
Yep.
So that's another way how the handle gets broken.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's bring this back to what you were talking about earlier about love and higher vibrations and stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So you could say it this way: the self that you discover, you got to make sure it's the real self.
But let me interject something right there, because this is something you and I have hammered on for the last 5 years. Best authentic self. Because people say, I want to be the best that I can be. I want to be the best that I can be. Well, if you're the best that you could be, but you're not true to yourself, you're not your best authentic self. Or if you could say, I'm going to be authentic, but I'm not going to try real hard. So I'm not going to be my best authentic self. I'm being as true to me as I can, but I'm not trying to excel. So the key to abundant life, the key to abundant living, is being your best abundance, your best authentic self. And I just had to interject that real quick.
No, it's good. I love it. But let's bring this into relationships with other people.
Okay.
So if you are an empty vessel, then you may still give to other people. Mm-hmm. I mean, the analogy breaks down here, but let me do it this way. Like, you can serve people, you can compliment people, you can love people, and be doing it from a place of an unmet need. The pulpit is a great place for people who never got enough attention.
Yep. Preachers. Yanni. The pulpit is a place to go when you haven't gotten enough attention. God damn.
It's a great place for people that didn't get enough attention in their life, because if nothing else, whatever time you're up there, you're the center of everybody's
attention.
So I used to, question this. Am I ministering from a place of I want to help other people? Just using this as an example. Mm-hmm. Am I preaching from a place of wanting to help other people? Or am I preaching from the place of wanting to help myself? Now, you could take that same thing and you could extrapolate it, I assume, into just about any area at all. Am I being a good host because I appreciate the people that have come into my home? and I want them to have a nice time, and I want to show them how much I value them? Or am I being a good host because everybody tells me what a great party that I throw, and I get a certain level of satisfaction off that? Not that there's anything wrong with getting satisfaction off that. I want to be clear. Perfectly appropriate, perfectly fine to do that. But the point I'm trying to make is you cannot truly love someone if you haven't first discovered and become aware of and loved and valued yourself.
Yeah.
And you're not giving to get in that sense. You're recognizing what I have brings value. And from a place of love, I want to share that value that I have with these people in my life. There's no compulsion to it. I don't have to love everybody. I mean, God, talk about an exhaust. I mean, what the fuck? Like, talk about Mission Impossible. Think about this for a minute. You got to love everybody.
Right.
If you love everybody, you really love nobody.
That's true.
Like,
so let me say this about that, because like when we talk about Christianity, we talk about unconditional love, and that is something that I don't think exists. There is no unconditional love. You love conditionally. There are conditions, there are terms and conditions to your expression of love. Maya's over here disagreeing with me. She says no, there's not. Now, I would disagree with that, babe. I think that at some point, now the closest thing, and I understand, I think I know where she's going, because she's a mother. She's, she has 5 kids, and so mother's love, I think the mother's love is as close to unconditional love as you will get.
Sure.
Right. But even there, it's like, I think that there are terms and conditions. They're just, the bar is very low. Yeah, I mean, you love your kids, but you don't like them, or you may not like what they do. Right? Yeah.
But I'll always love them.
Yeah, but that's. Let me put it this way. You know what the condition is? They're your kids. That's the condition. Okay, so there's a condition.
A condition that they're mine, but that's not conditional to the world.
It is conditional to the world. Because you don't love every child like you love your children.
No, because they're my children.
Exactly. So that's the condition.
It's not a condition on my love for them. I love them.
Okay, so folks, let me just say this. My wife is a lawyer, which means that the number of arguments that I win asymptotically approach 0. And it's okay. It's okay. She's also the smartest person I know. So
let me interject. I think it's ridiculous to think that we can love everybody.
No, you can't.
So if you take what Maya's saying, she can't give the same love to everybody's kids the way that she gives to her kids.
Right.
Just
and that's the condition.
Right. Yeah. Uh-oh. I just agreed with you. I'm not agreeing, Maya. I'm staying out of this.
Aaron said he's not agreeing with me. He said he's staying out of it. But I'm not disagreeing with her, because it's like you love your children unconditionally, but the condition is that they're your kids. That's the condition.
No, that makes sense to me, actually.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So that's my retort to my wife. And of course I will not win this argument. She will take me out to the woodshed and beat me senseless afterward. But
whatever.
Is that going to be fun?
it could be fun. Yes. She'll be adding value to my life.
Yeah.
She beats me.
We don't want to hear about it.
Yeah, she's over there she's got a switch over here like Big Mama. She's got a willow switch, and she whips my ass with it when I get out of line. All right. Beverly says, I'm sure Derrick's kids are upstanding. No, my listen, my kids are mostly good, but they have their share of fuck ups. I go through it with them, you know, and I love them, but I love them because they're my kids. If they weren't my kids and they carried on like they did, I probably wouldn't have much love for them. I'm just saying.
All right, let's look at some of these comments here. Let me see.
Yeah.
Renee says, if you want to be unconditionally loved, you have to do it yourself.
You know what? I like that to a point. But I think that we place conditions on self-love, because if we loved unconditionally, self-love wouldn't be an issue.
True.
But we place conditions on. We don't like things that we do. We don't like things that we say. We don't like how we look, you know. And so as a result, you're like, oh well, you know, I don't really, I'm not really sure if I love myself. But carry on.
Yeah. Let's see what we got here. Let's see. Alan says, healers do wear themselves out. You do like every other healer and go to the silence, the still.
So Alan, and again, I agree with you to a point, you know, that if you're a healer, if you're someone who has the gift of empathy, right? Because I think that healing is a byproduct of empathy. That at some point you're going to be depleted. At some point, you're just not going to be full all the time. You're going to be depleted, and even if you go back to the place of the still, I think that can be a recharge point to a point. But I think that also, you know, like what I was saying about people like Aaron and people like Barbara Simons, you know, that these are people that are constantly pouring out. They're constantly pouring out. But the thing is that, like, so I've seen the interaction between Aaron and Barbara, and I see how Aaron and Barbara pour into each other. I see the interaction between myself and Aaron, how we pour into each other. We have people that are pouring into us as well as we're pouring out. So I think that we manage to maintain the equilibrium. You know, sometimes we might be a little bit lower, a little bit higher. But I think that going to the still is a starting point. I don't think that it's a be all to end all.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting too that if you value yourself intrinsically, internally, your value, your love's coming from within, then you are able to be yourself and sort of let the chips fall where they may with other people. In other words, you're not going to tolerate abuse if you love yourself. I think it's Don Miguel Ruiz that said you'll only tolerate abuse that's a little bit more than you abuse yourself.
Ooh.
Because once someone's abusing you more than you think you're worth, that's when you get ready to get out of the relationship.
So that's part of the 4 agreements, right?
Yeah. It made a lot of sense. This is a good comment here. Oh, nope, not that's a good comment. Not the one I meant though. It's that Virgo in us, sometimes the overgivers. So I think she's referencing the fact that I'm also a Virgo. Yeah. Learning more and more balance at space. Yeah, me too. Absolutely.
And you know, like this. So let me say this about what Marie said is that I think that part of the thing is that, like, you know, and I think astrology is powerful. I think it's really powerful. And so when we think about the Virgo, we think about like Virgo and we think about Pisces, right? Virgo and Aquarius, right? So these are people that are pouring out of their vessels, right? But I think that what we all need to do is we need to get in touch with our inner Libra and learn how to balance those scales.
That's really good.
Yeah.
The Artsy Muse says, we come from source. Our root is I am. It's all the layers that are projected onto us, fear, shame, guilt, secrets, etc., that begin to create the image outside of us. That's a good comment.
That's a good comment. And let me say this about that, right? Because this is like one of my favorite passages of scripture. When Moses is talking to God and he says, who? And God is saying, I need you to go to Pharaoh and say these things, right? And Moses says, who shall I say sent me? And God replies, tell him I am. Now, watch this. Pharaoh knew who Put was. Pharaoh knew who Osiris was. Pharaoh knew who Isis was. Pharaoh knew who Horus was. Pharaoh knew who Imhotep was. But I am was foreign to him. Pharaoh wouldn't know who I am is. But watch this. Pharaoh knew exactly who Moses was. He had intimate knowledge of Moses. So God was telling Moses, tell him you're coming in your own name. And what you know, because if we go back and look at scripture, it says that Moses was skilled and knowledgeable in all the ways of the Egyptians. So when Moses went to Pharaoh and said, I am, my consciousness, my power, my ability, I'm telling you that I'm going to do this. And Pharaoh knew exactly what Moses was saying. But if you say, I am as some God, Pharaoh's going to be like, who the fuck is that? I don't know who I am is. But if you say, I'm Moses, you know me because we grew up together. We trained together. We worship together. You know me and I know you. Now Pharaoh has a point of reference to say, maybe I better not fuck with this guy.
That's good stuff. Renee says, it's nice to get gassed up, but at the end of the day, you have to hold up without it.
That's true.
Great point. It's my favorite comment of the night. Tommy says the hair down with the black makes you look like someone in a band I'd listen to.
Yeah, you look like a death metal artist, man.
That's my goal. Yeah. So Renee says, like a rock star.
Yep. Yeah, Aaron's coming on with his super fine self.
Yeah.
Did you watch the video, babe?
What video?
No, the Tonight Show.
I saw.
I'm just saying, did you see Aaron's hair?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's looking super fine at night.
Here's another one from Tommy. When I had cancer, a group of friends prayed over me. At one point, they had me pray, God, I'm a broken dude.
Ooh.
That's crazy.
See, and let me tell you something. Like, man, there is a song. There was an old gospel song. It's like, holiness is what you want from me. And it said, and then it's brokenness. Brokenness is what you want from me. And I'm thinking to myself, what kind of narcissistic God wants brokenness from his followers? At some point, I would say that I'm gonna put my God boots on for a minute. I want people that are whole, that understand who they are. Because if you know who you are, you understand who you are, you understand your value, you understand your worth, then your sacrifice to me in terms of who you believe yourself to be is meaningful. But if you come to me and I'm broken, what the fuck? I don't that doesn't affirm me in any way. I'm just saying if I'm putting myself in the shoes of God. Right. So anyway, this is like one of the most profound discussions we've ever had.
Yeah, it's been really good. George Rivera, I want to give him a shout out because I've known George, since 1990, 1991 or 92.
Yeah.
So what is that? 35 years.
Yeah.
So anyway, great to have you on, George. Thanks. If you're still watching.
Yeah. Ben Urban is on tonight. And I saw him out here. Wait a minute. Is it? I keep forgetting how the order of these things come in. But
this is a good one. While you're looking at those, I'm going to show this one. This is in reference to the 99, right? He says, sometimes in my case, they just go back to their 99, shake the dust off their sandals, as it were. That's funny.
You know, and that's the other thing too, is that, you know, the going after the one in favor of the 99 says that, okay, I realize that there might be one off the path, might be one that's run astray. And so there's something to that. Like if you look in at pre-Christian nomadic shepherding, right? And a lot of this, the philosophy behind that is well documented. It's very robust. And so the shepherd would go after the one. And so let me say this too. A lot of people don't understand this. It's like in the 23rd Psalm, where David is saying, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me, right? The staff was the rod that had the crook in it. And the purpose of that was for the shepherd to reach into a crag or a crevice and pull a sheep out, right? And that was the responsibility of the shepherd. But the under shepherds had rods, which were just basically straight sticks, right? And the thing is that the purpose of the rod was to nudge the sheep back into the fold as they were progressing. It was never intended to beat the sheep. And it's funny how modern Christianity turns to the rod as a tool of discipline rather than a tool of gentle correction.
Love that.
And so, you know, when you talk about that, it's like the reason why there was the rod and the staff is because the sheep were valuable. They were valuable for their meat, they were valuable for their milk, and they were valuable for their wool. So if you beat the sheep, the wool would not produce as efficiently. And also the meat would not be tender. So the thing is that the whole concept of shepherding is a gentle act. Now, what am I getting at with this in the context of what we're saying is like, when we talk about whether our handles are broken or not, the people who we entrust to shepherd us, whether they be religious leaders, community leaders, political leaders, business leaders, they have the capability to break the handles by abusing us, by using something that was intended for gentle correction as a tool of harsh discipline.
Yeah.
And you have to learn to recognize that and understand it, because if someone is coming to you with harsh discipline, guys, listen, there is no such thing as tough love. It's either tough or it's love. And people say, "Oh, well, you got to have tough love. You got to, sometimes you need to beat the saints." Listen, I'm not kidding. I've been in ministerial functions and they say, "Well, you got to beat the sheep into submission." I've heard that because sheep are stupid. I've heard that. And every time I would hear that, it would break my heart.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, you are not a vessel of rebuke. Your correction needs to be loving and nudging, not harsh and condemning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another way how our handles get broken, Aaron. That's where I was getting to.
Oh, it's a good point. It's a really good point. So back to me. I think when I was saying I'm looking like Jesus, Solis says a bit like Izzy, and I was thinking Izzy Stradlin from Guns N' Roses, right?
Yeah.
But then he corrected and said Ozzy. Damn autocorrect. I'd rather look like Izzy. I'd rather be Izzy.
Yeah. Hey, bite the head off a bat for us, Aaron.
No way, man. Have you seen that meme where the mom or dad bat is putting the baby bat to bed and reassuring them and saying, "No, Ozzy is not under your bed."
I haven't seen that one, but oh boy.
All right. I don't know if you've seen any other comments. Lots of comments out there. I don't know if we want to. Obviously, don't want to go through all of them.
Yeah. So Bennett said this. He said a better way to Christian. And let me say this, right? For me, I really have no use for the Bible as a rule and guide. Now, does the Bible say things that are right, that are good? Sure, because a broken clock is right twice a day. So you can't just dismiss something out of hand because you disagree with it, and I don't. And there are a lot of people who are good people who study the Bible and they get a lot from it. I don't shit on any of that, not anymore anyway. There was a time.
Yes, I know. I'll have to tell you about that later, because somebody came across my path because you were a legend, and they thought, well, if you're doing a show with me. And it was an atheist podcast, and I get on to do the recording. He's like, "Now, do I understand this right? Are you a theist?" And I said, "Well, I'm not an atheist." And he says, "Well, don't you do a show with Derrick Day?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he couldn't believe it, dude. He's like, "Well, how does that work?"
But you know what
do you mean? How does that work?
Check this out. I remember I did a podcast with Tim Mills. And I love Tim. Tim, and he's a ex-pastor that became an atheist, and we got into the topic of intelligent design, right? And at that time, I was still kind of on the fence about intelligent design. Aaron, I kid you not, these fuckers roasted me, man. They roasted me. Oh my God. They were like, I can't believe that you're an atheist and you still believe in intelligent design. So let me say this about this. Just to throw this out here. I don't believe in intelligent design as like some creative force just kind of said, okay, this, and this. I believe that energy is neither created nor destroyed. That's the law of conservation in quantum physics. And I agree with that. I also believe that because energy has had billions of years to exist, that energy becomes conscious, that it becomes sentient, and it figures stuff out. So I don't say that so much intelligent design. I think more like, okay, energy has had time to figure stuff out. This is, you have one form of energy that says, hey, I want to have a physical experience. And you have another form of energy saying, hey, that's a great idea. Let me jump on that bandwagon. And so suddenly you have physical beings that are energy beings. They are light beings.
Dude, I find that harder to believe than to believe in God. I just do. I just absolutely do. I find that more incredulous and crazy. I love you. I love you.
I know you do.
but honestly, I'm settling more into theism, like just for whatever reason, innately. I'm settling more and more into that place. But I don't know, man. Like, and none of us knows. I'm not coming at you.
We don't know. But this is what I'm saying is that energy takes on different forms. It takes on different forms. Why does it take on a form over another? And I think that over time,
because there's an intelligence behind it that we can call God if we can get over ourselves.
Well, okay. Let me say this. Let me say this about that, right? So this is where I've acquiesced to your point, right? Is that I believe that if there's a God, it's a collective God, and it's consciousness. It is the collective consciousness of all energy beings.
Yeah.
But that falls back into my energy as sentient.
We agree. We agree on most stuff. We do.
Most stuff. It's okay when we disagree. It's okay. We can't agree on everything.
I know. Tommy says, I'm an atheist, and my friend co-host Matt is also an atheist, but most of our guests on our show are not. And we will have great discussions. It's not hard. Correct.
Right.
Excellent point. No, I'm just giving you.
I know, man. And here's the thing. I take it all in good humor.
No,
because I love you, man. And I know that, we don't have to agree on every single point to love each other.
It's just crazy. I mean, think about this, right? Since we're on this topic.
Yep.
Why is there something instead of nothing? And I'm not putting this out as an argument to try to make an apology for anything or get anybody to believe anything. It's just a thought that I have. Why is there something instead of nothing? And if there was nothing, there would be literally nothing, not even nothing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just weird that we're here, whether it's the universe, whether it's energy that became sentient and conscious, whether there is a, intelligent design or no intelligent design. It's just weird that we're here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it
weird
is.
That I'm me and that you are you. And,
yeah.
Why am I me? Why am I living this life at this time instead of being conscious of being in another body at another time? I mean, those questions, I don't think we have good answers one way or the other for those.
No, but the beauty of it is that we can talk about, what we think, and present a perspective, and at the end of the day, I'm not trying to win everybody over. I'm not trying to say, hey, my way is the best way. At the end of the day, I always tell people, I said, my job is not to tell you what to think. My job is just to say think. And if you think, then you'll kind of figure out your answers. But just think, don't just leave it, don't abdicate your responsibility to think to others.
But don't you think, I'm coming back to this. That's great. I agree with you 100%. And I feel exactly the same way. It's one of the things that's great because I can believe in God, and it doesn't have to be the God of the Bible.
Right.
I can believe in God, and I don't feel any need whatsoever to try to convert anybody to that belief because I don't think it makes a damn bit of difference. Right. I personally believe that we are eternal, that we have always been.
Yeah.
And that we will be after this life, and that we are 100% eternally secure and safe. I believe that with all my heart and soul.
100% agree with that.
Believe what you believe has absolutely no effect on that whatsoever. It may or may not affect the way you think and the way you live your life. But as far as your eternal existence, you can't change it. You can't do anything about it. Now, if I'm wrong and I'm just this biological body, then when I die, I won't even know that I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And all the believing in the world isn't going to change that.
Well, and this is what I'll say about that is that belief doesn't matter.
Exactly.
And that's why when I look at Gnostic teaching versus Orthodox teaching, the whole thing about Gnostic is no. It's like, because when you don't have to rely on belief, because belief doesn't change anything, but what does.
Correct. Absolutely. And at the end of the day, we only know what we can know as people.
Right.
In other words, you are locked into your consciousness. I'm locked into mine.
Correct.
And like you've been saying, I'll show, wherever you go, there you are.
There you are. Yep.
So, I mean, actually, what was interesting? And I know I'm getting way off course.
Oh, man, go for it. This is great.
I was listening to some guys I was listening to a guy interviewing a quantum physicist. I can't even remember his name, but he made the point that solipsism is the only, this is what he said. It's not what I'm saying. It's what he said.
Yeah.
Solipsism is the only argument about existence that cannot be refuted. In other words, there's no argument against it. In other words, he's saying, I'm not saying it's true,
Yeah.
but there is no argument that can falsify it. There's no logic against it.
So watch this. This is and then this is a challenge, right? Because I've been studying the logical fallacies, right?
Yep.
And unfalsifiability is one of those things. It's like when there can be no argument that is unfalsifiable. Because if it's unfalsifiable, then that means it can't be proven wrong. And
that's what this guy was saying, exactly what he was saying. And if you think about it, if you think about what solipsism is, try to come up with a counter argument to it. And I did. I tried, and I was like, God, he's right.
You just gave me a homework
assignment. There probably is. But when you just sit and think about it, it's like, fuck.
Well, see, here's the challenge, right? Is that does that then become religious? Because religious arguments are inherently unfalsifiable, right? You can't.
But you can postulate an argument against it. This guy said you can't even come up with an argument against it.
You could postulate an argument, but the thing is that somebody's going to come back and they're going to negate the falsifiability.
Right, but the point that he was making with solipsism is you can't, because you only know your consciousness, therefore solipsism says your consciousness is all that exists. How can you come up with any argument that that's not true?
Okay, so you know what? That's a fair argument. Because at the end of the day, we only know for certain our own consciousness.
Right.
Everything else we speculate. And so we can, let me say this, you could probably produce a hypothetical argument, but can you produce a hard peer-reviewed theory against it? And
I can't come up with one.
Yeah. That's good.
It goes back to Descartes, right? Descartes doubted everything, but the only thing that he couldn't doubt was that he was doubting, that he existed. So even if he's doubting, there's a doubter in there to doubt.
Yeah.
So we can doubt the existence of everything else, but we cannot doubt the existence of ourselves. And so therefore we have solipsism.
You've just given me a homework assignment.
It's just something I was watching. I was like, God damn, he's right.
Yeah, that's I'm sitting up here like, okay, I'm like, okay, how can I falsify this? Now I'm going to go back and review this against what I've been studying about logical fallacy.
Yeah, let's. Tommy says this is great. We probably need to land the plane, but this is great. He says, "Well, I'm glad consciousness cooked up this conversation."
Yeah, Tommy, this is all your fault. You made this conversation happen. You thought it into existence, and you said, you know something, I need to have the avatars of Aaron and Derrick discuss this conversation. And
so I can feel better about myself.
So thank you, Tommy. Thank you for speaking this into existence. You bad motherfucker, you.
I love it. I love it. All right, dude. I love you.
I love you too, man.
Thank you for everything. Everybody that's been watching and commenting, thank you so much for watching us. And why don't you take us out, brother?
Listen, thank you for growing in real time with us. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk. Thank you for participating. For everybody that's made a comment, we didn't go through all of them, but we love you just the same. And stay tuned, because we're going to go deeper into this Gnostic path. And I think that you are going to be blessed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So with that being said, peace and hair grease to you all.